Imagine discovering an ancient stone tablet, brushing away the dust of millennia, and reading a historical record that defies everything we know about human biology. In the early 20th century, archaeologists excavating the sands of ancient Mesopotamia found exactly that. It is known today as the Sumerian King List. This ancient manuscript, etched into clay, records the rulers of Sumer, the world's first literate civilization. But it doesn't begin with a normal human lineage. The list begins with a staggering claim. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. What follows is a chronology that shatters reality. The text states that the very first human king ruled for a length of time that stretches back into the Ice Age. His name was Alulim, and according to the clay prisms left behind by the Sumerians, he sat on the throne of Eridu for 28,800 years. To understand a reign of almost 30 millennia, we have to look at where it happened. Eridu wasn't just a settlement. In Mesopotamian mythology, it was the first city ever built, rising from the marshes of southern Iraq. It was the earthly home of Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation. When kingship was handed down by the gods, Alulim was the man chosen to receive it. We don't have records of his day-to-day decrees or the battles he fought. His identity is completely absorbed by the monumental duration of his reign. Think about what 28,000 years means. If a king took the throne today and ruled for that long, his reign would outlast the entirety of recorded human history, several times over. He would watch glaciers retreat, oceans rise, and entire species go extinct. Yet the Sumerian scribes recorded this number not as mythology, but as absolute, unquestionable history. So how did ancient scribes arrive at this impossible number? Did they simply make it up, or is there a code hidden in the cuneiform? The answer lies in the Sumerian mathematical system. Unlike our modern base 10 system, the Sumerians used a base 60 system, known as the sexagesimal system. It's the same mathematical foundation that gives us 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. In this system, the number 3,600 held special significance. It was a unit called a sar. When we look closely at Alulim's reign of 28,800 years, it divides perfectly. It is exactly 8 sars. Historians and mathematicians believe this was not a literal measure of time, but a symbolic one. In the ancient world, assigning a massive, mathematically perfect number to a ruler wasn't a historical error. It was a way of expressing their absolute divinity, their immense power, and their closeness to the gods. Some scholars have even theorized that the original counts were in days or months, which were later misinterpreted by later scribes as years, artificially inflating the timeline. But to the Sumerians who read the King List, the numbers functioned as a political statement. The older the king, the closer he was to the divine origin of power. Alulim was just the beginning. After he finally passed, kingship fell to Elongar, who ruled for 36,000 years, exactly 10 sars. In total, the Sumerian King List names 8 kings who ruled before a cataclysmic event. Together, these 8 men governed for an astonishing 241,200 years. This era is known as the antediluvian period, the time before the flood. Then, the text abruptly shifts its tone. The scribes carved a chilling sentence into the clay. Then the flood swept over. This is the Great Deluge, a massive localized flood that devastated Mesopotamia and inspired the flood myths found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and later the biblical story of Noah. The flood acted as a cosmic reset button. It wiped the earth clean of the immortal god-kings. When the waters receded, the King List tells us that kingship had to be lowered from heaven a second time. But things had changed. The reigns of the post-flood kings plummeted from tens of thousands of years to hundreds, and eventually to normal human lifespans. The Sumerian King List was likely compiled thousands of years after Alulim supposedly lived, likely during the Isin dynasty. The rulers of that time needed a way to legitimize their power. By creating an unbroken chain of kings stretching all the way back to Alulim, the first king of the first city, they connected their current mortal reigns to the immortal majesty of the gods. Alulim may not have sat on a throne for 28,000 years, but by ensuring his name was the first one carved into the clay of history, the Sumerian scribes granted him something far more impressive: immortality. So, what do we ultimately make of Alulim and his staggering 28,000-year reign? The Sumerian King List isn't just a ledger of names and impossible mathematics. It's a window into how the very first civilization understood time, power, and their own place in the cosmos. To them, history wasn't just a timeline of human events. It was a grand, sweeping narrative where gods and men stood shoulder to shoulder. It reminds us that the line between myth and history isn't always perfectly clear. Sometimes the stories our ancestors left behind in the clay aren't literal truths, but powerful metaphors designed to outlast the sands of time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back to the dawn of civilization, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into our ancient past. Until next time, keep questioning history.